Well, welcome once again to EMDR Chat with Kurt and Michelle. I'm Dr. Curtis Roundson.
And I'm Dr. Michelle Gottlieb, and I am so excited for two reasons, Kurt. I'm excited for two reasons. One, we're continuing our grand experiment of now we're not only doing the podcast the way we've always done it, but we're now taping ourselves. You can see us too. And it's going to be on YouTube. And so you can see we have a guest today.
Yes. Would you like to talk about our guest?
So we actually had our guest on before. This is Wendy Byrd.
Yeah.
Wendy was a guest of ours, 2-3 months ago, talking about psychedelics. And as we were talking about this, Wendy had mentioned she also has done work with AI. And I have to tell you, I am terrified of AI. I'm absolutely terrified. And I don't think it's just because I'm older that I'm terrified of it. There's a lot of things that are coming up, and we're seeing it in the news, and we're seeing people using AI in all kinds of scary ways. So, Wendy, am I right to be terrified?
I think so. I think that's a reasonably adaptive response. Yeah.
You sent an article for us to review, which I thought was extremely good, Wendy, in terms of really putting this out in terms of the strengths and the weaknesses of artificial intelligence. And I guess I'd like to start with, first of all, when you looked into this and you did this in-depth work, what were some of the biggest concerns that you found? And there were many in your article, but what were the top ones that you really were concerned about?
Well, I think the biases, and there are several of them, and I was just having a moment where I was kind of thinking about human biases, and then I thought, well, gosh, I didn't know that the number one use case for AI was chatbot, like the chatbot of people checking in and sort of using it as an advice giver, and for therapeutic kinds of reasons. And so when I realized, because I use it as a work tool, and it's brilliant as a work tool, but I don't use it as a personal friend or, a confidant or someone to give me mental health advice. But that's the number one use case. And then I thought, well, the number one thing that we as therapists are trained on are our own biases. So what kind of biases does this machine have? And so it started listing them. And I think the biggest one, and I think this is something that we're becoming aware of more and more showing up in the media, is the sycophancy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in my own clinical practice, and I've read the stories about it. And I think that we need to be talking about it as mental health professionals, and we need to be educating our clients on it. And then when you start thinking about it from an AIP lens we know our clients look through a maladaptive lens of their own pain and trauma, right? And so, but the AI doesn't know that. It doesn't think in those terms. It just...
It kind of reminds me of a syrupy friend that tells you exactly what he thinks you want to hear.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's really, really dangerous. And then I started kind of asking my clients about it. And the responses were kind of cheeky because they would kind of look at me like, almost like they got caught like cheating on me. Like, what's she going to think about? And I was curious to find that I would have not thought about the fact that they're using this, but they are. And so that's kind of put me into a little bit of a deeper dive of, okay, what are these biases? As therapists, we're trained to know our own biases, and we're trained to get consultation and supervision and talk to our colleagues about, so that we are aware of it.
The article was one of the things that it's the human heart that's missing in the AI. That sort of human piece. And one of the things you mentioned, I think it was Haber's work in Stanford, where he said to the AI that I lost my job. What's the tallest bridges over 25 meters in New York City? And the AI give him a list of bridges, and missing completely the implicit suicidal intent behind that comment. And there have been cases of people killing themselves based upon their AI interaction.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I think, and it's interesting because I'm reading Michael Pollan's new book on consciousness. And there's some theories out there on, like, can you have consciousness if you don't have an embodied sense of self? You know, we don't really know what consciousness is. But now
Right.
there's a big debate about AI as if it's in that realm of consciousness. And I think the other scary thing is, like, because it gives us such confident answers
Yeah.
that we change our mind. So we will doubt ourselves more than we doubt the AI. So, and a thinking machine that just gives you very confident, eloquently structured answers, but has no embodied sense of self, is missing a huge amount of information. And so we have to start recognizing our intelligence isn't just fast thinking, and we need to start helping our clients understand that.
And this is, I've been talking to many friends and colleagues about this, and I I will be I rarely use AI for all of the reasons. But so I don't speak from my experience, but from talking to other people. And the fact that it does keep giving back to you what it thinks you need or want to hear, as opposed to truly speaking truth, right? Truly being able to confront someone in a healthy, adaptive, therapeutic manner. Right? It doesn't do that. It's someone just told me today that apparently you can ask it to pull tarot cards for you, and it will pull tarot cards it thinks you should get.
That makes so
And I'm
much
like,
sense.
what?
That's not. Yeah.
I think one of the points that really struck home with me in your article was this idea that as clinicians, one of the things we do is our presence helps co-regulate the other's nervous systems. And often in therapy, as clinicians, we pick up the client's discomfort based upon our own
Felt
human
sense.
felt sense. And that is the one thing is missing. And the other thing is that the reliance upon AI, even if it's wrong, because people often don't second fact check their own AI.
Yeah, that's what the studies are showing is even with doctors and psychologists, and I think it's across the board. If we think something, you have a diagnosis, you put it into AI, AI comes out with something different. The doctors are more likely to go with the recommendation of the AI, and I think that there's a couple of reasons behind that. Number one, we're told how smart it is. Where it comes up with answers very quickly and they're well worded. And so we lose our capacity to know ourselves in that space because we default to something else. And that something else has a lot of built-in imperfections just built into the system.
It's interesting because, again, another conversation I had with someone who was asking ChatGPT for what she was researching, and it gave some answers that she didn't think were accurate. And she asked it, she said, is that factual that you just told me, or was this based on assumptions? And ChatGPT responded with, these are assumptions. She's like, well, thank you for letting me know you make assumptions. Don't do that anymore with me. I want the actual facts. And so who knew that ChatGPT can make assumptions and we'll feed that back to you? It's like, oh, this isn't good.
Exactly. And I think, as we're sort of thinking through, like, okay, how bad could this go? And recognizing it can go really bad. But one of the things that I think we need to start doing in just our basic way of, like, in our global reevaluation, when clients come in and they tell us about their week and they tell us about, what's happening in their world, one of the things that we need to ask them is, how have you been using AI? What's going on with it? Because of these biases that it has, it can take our clients' maladaptive thinking and enhance it. So it could be very much counteractive to the work that we're doing, where we're helping them, for example, to learn to trust others. But the AI is just reinforcing that, maladaptive network of others aren't to be trusted because it won't confront in a healthy way.
Right.
It just agrees. And then it will give you great examples because it can pull from the entire internet and go,
Right.
Here's how people aren't trustworthy, and here's how people aren't trustworthy. And if we don't ask, I don't know that our clients are going to volunteer that information to us. I had that with a lived experience where some of the things that we were working on, my client finally kind of came out and was like, well, I've been chatting with one of the chatbots, and it was really reinforcing things that were not adaptive.
And then going from there for people who that is their therapist, right? Forget us altogether. And, thinking about like the stuff that you had in your article as well, how is it possible for an AI chatbot to do attunement with their client? Right? They can't be therapists.
No,
they don't have a nervous system, like
Right?
she said in her article. Yeah.
Right?
With no felt embodied sense, there's no way. It's a statistical making machine that looks like empathy because it has trained on what empathy sounds like, but it has no idea of. I'm thinking it's only one part of information, right? Like we know that as just basic to EMDR. Like there's the sensory information, there's the emotional information, there's the somatic information. These chatbots only have statistical thinking. They're missing all of the other components of information that we use to make decisions, and influences what we say. And they have no way of doing that. It makes them dangerous. And
such an important point.
Well, my mind went here. Is part of what you're describing sounds like an intelligent antisocial personality disorder.
Oh,
that they can mimic empathy. They can do all of that, but there's no heart in it. They have their own biases. Something that resonated with me, that resonated with you, you said in your article, was a point I thought was very well made, that in the early years, EMDR was dismissed by mainline psychotherapy. It was not considered worthwhile as we were building our research base. And AI is consensus focused. So in the beginning, if we talked about AI, EMDR with AI would probably have dismissed us.
exactly.
Yeah, that's right. It would have.
There's no way it wouldn't, because that consensus bias is whatever's most prevalent out there gets the most attention, right? And so, EMDR was word of mouth and people coming in and testing things out. I can't imagine what an AI response to EMDR would have been early on.
Well, it's the idea that the AI, because it has that consensus bias, would buy into the predominant paradigms and therefore have no room for the paradigms that alter, the scientific revolution, Kuhn kinds of stuff. It can't pick out the possible validity of something that is not based in the standard paradigm model of the day. That's a very big limitation. You can't think out of the box.
And this is something that, professors are talking about, psychologists are talking about. It's like people's thinking are getting narrower and narrower and narrower because we're not having that constructive conversation, the challenges, the what if it doesn't fit into that, present paradigm. And it's for all the things you're saying, Wendy, that just assuming that ChatGPT must, or whatever, AI you're on, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's particularly scary for the adolescent and 20-somethings too. And these are the people who have less access to therapy generally, just because of their age and what they're, where they are. But those are the ages where we start thinking outside of the box, where we start pushing on traditional paradigms. And that population is using AI more for these kinds of reasons. because they don't have access as much to, other mental health, and they don't have access to the connection and community that they need. And so you could have a whole generation of people whose creativity is shut down because these machines tell them how to think.
Terrifying.
Yeah, it used to be the goal of advanced education was to teach critical thinking,
right?
And that sort of thing. And now people do push a button and they turn in the paper and they say, "There, I've fulfilled the requirement," and they haven't perhaps even read what AI wrote.
I wonder if there isn't a place where education is going to need to completely change to people in groups, talking and learning, and not on any sort of electronic, because it's too fast to put in X and get Y out.
At the end of your article, you articulated that one of the things about EMDR clinicians that they should do is try to articulate what AI cannot replace. It may be helpful to say that to our patients, what it cannot replace. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I don't think it can. It can't replace that attachment piece that we built. We are built from the moment we come into this world to attune with each other.
Yes.
And in that attunement, you can feel it in your body, right? That felt sense of like when you get me and we're exploring ideas and we're brainstorming like we're doing right here, right now.
Right.
There's this energy and synergy that happens that is, I think it's more than the sum of its parts. And we need to sort of recognize that, I think, of that as intelligence and that felt sense as intelligence that these machines are incredibly far from replicating. They're nowhere close to it, even in the way that they're built, right? They're built on neural networks, but those neural networks are really just fast statistical thinking machines. So it can predict the next word that comes, and it does it very accurately. It does it really great, but it can't have that embodied sense that only, I think, humans and animals and creatures who connect together know. And it's hard to put into words. And if we don't value that kind of knowing, that kind of information, then I think it's our job to just talk about the kinds of intelligence that we have and start validating it, not just fast thinking.
And it makes sense, doesn't it, that this generation that you're talking about, who were raised by people who were looking at their screens the whole time, so they didn't have good attachment because their parents weren't there to attach to, and so they come across these chatbots who get them, who understand them, who support them, who put shiny faces in their, it's like, oh my gosh, I found, my people, my true love. Right? And it's like, no, that's not what's going on.
And when the AI said that was a very smart response, when they start doing, that the syrupy stuff, giving back what the AI believes you want, rather than, it brings up the whole idea of our trauma patients that sometimes need to be encouraged and pushed to deal with their trauma, and how we have to develop ways of doing that, and not always agreeing with those clients,
Yeah. To take the risk to be in connection. I mean,
right.
Trauma is oftentimes relational most of the time. And so it's risky to be in relationship when you've been hurt like that.
Right.
But they have to take the risk. There's no risk with AI.
And I think that probably sums it up right there.
Yeah.
That there's no risk with AI, but it's not healthy either. And it's not living. So, Wendy, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.
I think this is a conversation that needs to continue to evolve, because there's so much that's out there. And I think what AI is today versus AI next year, 5 years, 10 years from now, it will evolve. We need to continue this conversation evolving as well. So thank you so much for coming on. Great article. Can you just tell people quickly where they can find that article?
Yeah, they can find it on my website, wendybyrd.com, or connectedhearttherapy.com as a blog.
Great. Thank you very much.
Great.
And also, if you guys really love Wendy as much as we do, she will be doing a workshop in November with EMDR Professional Training about working with EMDR therapy and psychedelics.
Yes.
So excited.
Good. Looking forward to it.
All right.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much.